Today I'll be reading Chapter 5 of Only Fools Rush In, a college AU by Vindicated Virgil on Tumblr, Bookish Panda on AO3. Trigger warnings apply to this chapter, including a power outage, blood, minor bouts of beat poetry violence, an anxiety attack, and sex mentions. Chapter 5. Power outages can lead to some very bad things. It was a dark and stormy night. It was midterm season. They were all crammed into one small study room in the library. Empty potato chip bags littered on the floor, 3 cardboard cup holders from the nearby coffee shop on the table, the drinks having been consumed long ago. Logan and Janice were sitting at the desk, their laptops open in front of them, textbooks sprawled open, and their feet twisted together underneath the table. Logan's tie was undone and around his shoulders, and Janice had shrugged out of his coat hours ago, the sleeves of his shirt pushed up to his elbows. Patton was laying on his stomach, typing furiously at his laptop that was sitting in front of him. Just in front of the laptop was Remus, sitting cross-legged with a textbook in his lap. But he had leaned his head against the wall behind him and dozed off, snoring lightly. Every once in a while, Patton would look up from his laptop and smile at his boyfriend. Roman was sitting against another wall, legs spread out and Virgil sitting between them, both of their eyes focused on their scripts as they slowly and quietly spoke the words. They'd have to be off script in less than a month. It had already been 2 weeks since they were cast. Remus stirred, rubbing his hand against his face, and he glanced down at Patton, whose legs were swinging gently in the air. His glasses pulled up into his hair, and his eyes drooped shut until he realized it. Then he opened them wide, reading the same line from his research on the laptop over and over again. The taller man smiled and lifted the laptop up and set it down on his other side, making the other glance up at him with lidded eyes and soft smile. "I think it's time to get you home, little flower." Remus's voice was quiet and soft as he trailed his fingers against Patton's face, who nodded and sat up, scooting to sit directly next to Remus, his head landing on his boyfriend's shoulder. "No, don't go dozing on my shoulder, babe," he said, but didn't make a move to get up, and instead wove his fingers through Patton's, resting his head on the other's. From across the room, his twin was watching the interaction, and he had stopped speaking his lines, which made Virgil look back at him. "Hey, what's wrong?" Roman shook his head, plastering a smile on his face as he refocused his eyes on the script. The tall man frowned, pushing the script down, making his boyfriend look at him. "Ro, what's up?" He glanced at his twin again, whose eyes were closed, but he spoke softly to Patton so that no one else could hear what he was saying. "I know they seem happy, but I don't buy it." Virgil's frown deepened, and he crossed his arms. "Remus has changed, though," he said, and Roman sighed, pressing his face into Virgil's shoulder. "Ro, I know it's hard, but please, for Patton's sake, just let them be." Roman knew that his boyfriend was right, but after everything he'd been through with Remus, he wasn't sure if his twin did deserve the happiness that he was getting. But Patton did, and that was enough for him. And then the lights went out. The room was bathed in darkness. Only the emergency lights were on, but no one could see anyone else. Roman felt as Virgil tensed up in his arms, a low whimper escaping, and he wrapped his arms tightly around his taller boyfriend. "What's happening?" Patton's voice rang out, and there was some clamoring heard, probably him trying to stand up. After a few moments, someone shook the door, but the doors into the study rooms were electric, and it didn't budge. "Are we stuck in here?" "Oh, God." Virgil's voice was breathy and panicked, and Roman felt him start to shake more. "Jan, Roman, keep talking to him and hold him tightly, okay? The dark and closed-in spaces make him anxious. Janice's voice was there, calm and collected, and Roman followed his instructions, lacing his fingers through Virgil's hair. I'm here, V. I've got you, okay? Hey, once we get out of here, I'll walk you home and we can cuddle with the lights on, he began, trying to speak in a soothing voice. Where are your headphones? Do you want to listen to some jazz? He murmured an affirmation, and in the dark, Roman ruffled through Virgil's backpack to find the headphones, then connected the Bluetooth to his phone, playing soft jazz for him, cuddling him close by. Janice and Logan's hands had met in the darkness, the lights from their laptops fading out since they could do no work with the internet out. Logan's voice was there, calm. If you need to go over and sit with Virgil, please do, he said, but Janice just gripped his hand tighter. I need to learn that others can care for him too, he said softly, so that no one else could hear him. If he needs me, I'll go, but I also need you, Lo. He scooted his chair closer to Logan's, his head resting on the astronomy major's shoulder, and they sat in silence, waiting out the darkness as the wind raged and whistled outside. Patton had returned to his spot on the floor next to Remus, and the two met eyes in the dim lights, a smirk on Remus's face, and a pale blush over Patton's. Remus, I know that look, but please, the others are here, he whispered, as Remus pressed kisses to his neck, his hand trailing to grip Patton's hip. But think about it. What if we ran the risk of getting caught? Doesn't that sound exhilarating to you? Remus's voice was low, and it sent a shockwave through Patton, who bit his lip to prevent a low whine from escaping his throat. He gripped the front of Remus's shirt tightly and pulled him so their lips met, and they did their best to be quiet as their hands continued wandering, though not yet dipping below the waistline. It was like that for a while, each couple buried in the feeling and comfort of their partner, not much attention being paid to the others. That was, until Remus hit a bit a little too hard at Patton's ear, causing a yelp to come out of the small man. Instantly, Roman was standing, Virgil being pushed to the side. What the hell are you doing, Remus? His voice was booming, and Janice leapt into action, taking Virgil into his arms, cradling the shaking man. Logan moved too, a hand firmly on Roman's chest. Get off of him! You're hurting him! Roman's voice was laced with hatred and anger as he shouted those words. Patton stood up, fixing his clothes, which had become haphazard with all of the grabbing. He's not hurting me, Ro. We were... He didn't finish his sentence, embarrassment clearly in his tone, but no one could see the deep blush that coated his cheeks. Why would you think he was hurting me? Because his friends hurt me, and I can't trust him to not hurt you, Roman yelled, trying to push past Logan, but the nerd was surprisingly strong and kept the theatrical man where he was. Let me at him! Remus stepped closer. Let him go, Logan. We need to deal with this. It's been swept under the rug too many times, Remus said, and Logan stepped behind him, pulling Patton under his arm. Roman, please, Patton whined, his hand trying to reach for the back of Remus's shirt. He's not going to hurt me. You don't know him like I do, Pat. He's dangerous. He's done some awful things, and he hasn't changed, Roman said, voice shaking, but his voice was shaking with fury. I wanted to believe that he had changed for the better, but he hasn't, and I won't let him hurt you. Before Patton could respond, Remus's voice was there, responding. You're wrong, Ro. I have changed, and I'm sorry that I've hurt you and that the people I used to be around hurt you, but I'm different now, I swear. He didn't get a chance to finish his sentence as Roman grabbed his shirt, and a clenched fist collided with Remus's face, knocking him onto the floor. Patton screamed, throwing himself onto Remus to make sure he was okay. and then the lights turned on. Suddenly, Virgil stood up, grabbing his stuff, and stormed out without saying anything. Janice gave a look to Logan, who nodded and ran after him, not looking back. Hey, look at me, babe. You're gonna be okay. Patton's words were soothing as he grabbed his backpack and rummaged through it for some tissues. He wiped the blood away from Rebus's nose, then pressed against his eye. It's going to swell. We should get some ice on it. I'm so sorry, little flower. Remus's voice cracked, eyes shut tightly as he tried to stand. Patton stood with him, stabilizing him, and with his free hand he packed up all of their things and slid both of their bags over his shoulder. With a lasting, disappointed look at Roman, he led Remus out of the room, their voices too low for Roman to hear what was being said. Logan had returned to his spot, packing up his things and then Janice's. Roman glanced over at him, then sank to his knees, regret filling him. Did I just fuck up? Logically speaking, yes. Logan responded plainly, his eyes not looking towards the theatrical one. Remus has changed. I know that it can be hard for you to believe that, given your history, but Patton is truly happy with him, and you need to let them be happy. You and Virgil are happy, so I would think it is only logical that you allow your brother to be happy too. I should check on Virgil, Roman said, scooting over to pack up his things. Logan slid the straps for his backpack and Janice's bag over his shoulders, then walked over to Roman, setting a hand on his shoulder. I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe wait until tomorrow. Go home, get some rest, let it all blow over. Janice can take care of him for the night, Logan recommended, then gathered the trash the others had scattered and left, leaving Roman alone on the floor. When Roman got back to the apartment, all of the lights were out. Patton and Logan were nowhere to be seen, so he figured they were both spending the night at the other's apartment. He showered, then got into bed, but laid on his back staring up at the ceiling until the sun started to bleed through the break in his curtains. He fucked up. Virgil slammed the door to his bedroom shut. He was surprised that he was able to keep the tears from falling until this moment, but when his knees met the ground and his backpack slumped onto the floor, they fell. His body shook with sobs, and he barely registered Janice's arms wrapping around him, the soothing tones of his voice lulling him into sleep. Once Janice knew that Virgil was asleep for the night, he removed his shoes and headphones, then dimmed the lights in the bedroom and stepped out. When he did so, he saw Remus sprawled on the couch. Patton sitting on the floor with tears tracking down his face and one of Remus's hands in both of his, and Logan was leaning over him, pressing ice against Remus's eye. "How is he?" Janice asked, exhaustion evident in his voice. Patton glanced over at him, concern in his eyes. He passed out as soon as they left the library. Luckily, I was able to help Patton drag him here, Logan explained, setting the ice down on the coffee table. "How's Virgil?" "Asleep. He didn't say anything, though," he responded, collapsing onto the chair, pressing his fingers against his forehead. "I'm going to kill Roman if he hurts Virgil." Patton chewed on his lower lip, eyes focused on Remus. Silence fell over the room as Logan cleaned up the towels and ice he had used. "Can you help me get him into bed?" Patton finally asked, glancing at Logan and Janice. They both nodded softly, then helped him carry Remus into bed. Once he was in bed, Logan and Janice left, leaving Patton to remove Remus's bloody shirt, his shoes having been discarded when they entered the apartment. He slid Remus's jeans off next, then undressed himself, putting on one of Remus's large shirts. He got under the covers next to Remus, then held him tightly, eyes focused on his boyfriend. Patton wouldn't be sleeping. He needed to make sure that Remus was okay. Outside the bedrooms, Janice buried himself in Logan's arms, the stress cascading off of him like slowing dirt off of a dirty window in the rain. "Please stay," he whispered, and Logan nodded, pressing his lips to the top of Janice's head. Remus woke up in his own bed, but the arms that were around him were softer than any pillow could have been. His eyes fluttered open to see Patton staring at him, dark circles under his eyes, hair mussed into a messy bun. Oh my goodness. "Morning, little flower," he said weakly, his throat feeling parched. Patton said nothing at first, but scrambled to grab his bottle of water, then held it to Remus's lips. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly, setting the bottle back down. Remus shrugged, his hand gravitating towards his face, and it stung a bit when he touched his cheek. "You have a black eye, but Logan examined you and said that you don't have a broken nose or anything," Patton explained. "You passed out once we left the library." "Is Roman okay?" Remus asked. Patton's face went hard, and he looked away from Remus. "Logan and I both spent the night here, so I'm not sure," he responded, sighing a little. "He said that Roman looked pretty defeated, but—" Patton's eyes went back to Remus's, and there was fire behind his pupils that he hadn't seen before. "I'm pissed at him." "No, little flower, it's fine. I've messed up in the past, and I deserved it," Remus explained, taking one of Patton's hands in his own. He never lashed out like that before. I'm glad he finally did. "I'm not. He hurt you, Remus. I won't let him hurt the man that I—" He was cut off by Remus leaning up to kiss him softly. "Don't, please. You're too full of emotions right now, Patton. I don't want you to say something that you'll regret later," he whispered, pressing his forehead against his boyfriend's. "I know you mean it right now, but I don't want you to say it today and then not feel it tomorrow. Please, Patton." Janice woke up in Logan's arms. They were messy last night, their clothes scattered on the floor, and he had forgone his usual pillows for Logan's warm chest after their sloppy sex. Janice felt fidgety as he slid out of Logan's arms and pulled on his robe. He prayed that Virgil was still asleep as he crossed the hallway and opened the door to the emo's room a smidge. Snores were echoing out of the crack in the door, and Janice breathed a sigh of relief as he stepped in, closing the door behind him. He sat on the desk chair and watched Virgil for a long time, long enough for Logan to bring him in a cup of coffee, long enough for Remus to peek in and apologize quietly for what had happened. When Virgil woke up, the first thing he saw was Janice, sipping on his mug of coffee. He felt groggy, and it took a few moments for him to recall the events of what had happened in the study room. When he did, there was a visible shake in his hands. "Are you okay?" Janice's voice was smooth, and Virgil just shrugged, not trusting his own voice. Virgil met his eyes, then glanced at the door and back to him. Janice nodded in understanding. They had been friends for so long that they understood exactly what the other person was asking, even if it was just with their eyes. "Remus is okay. Patton took good care of him, and I think they are eating breakfast right now. Logan spent the night, but he will be going back to their apartment soon, since he has some schoolwork to finish up. No one has heard from Roman yet." "I should call him," Virgil started, but hesitated when Janice frowned at his sentence. "He messed up, Janice. He needs to know that." "I think he does, but please, Virgil, take it easy today." Janice's voice was pleading, but Virgil just shook his head. "Do you know what happened between them?" he asked. Janice's frown deepened. "I only know the minuscule parts of the story that Remus has relayed to us both," he explained, and Virgil nodded. that his high school friends made fun of and then physically hurt Roman, that Remus and all of his friends ended up in jail one night, and that Remus and Roman both had to go to therapy for a long time. Roman won't talk about it. I tried asking, but he changes the subject every time. He's scared that it'll happen again, that it'll happen to Patton, Virgil said, hugging one of his pillows tightly. He was in the wrong to punch Remus, but I think I'd probably do the same thing if one of my best friends was with someone who had caused me so much pain in the past. I'd punch Logan for you. You love him, Janice said plainly, but Virgil didn't respond. Janice knew Roman screwed up, but he also knew that Virgil was happy with Roman, happier than he'd ever been. And if Janice had to pick up the pieces and stick them back together, despite everything, he'd do it. For Virgil. Look, I know it's scary, and this whole situation with Remus, it's complicated. But don't let that stop you from opening up to Roman, okay? He had one small slip-up, and Remus has accepted that he deserved it. So we should all accept it too. I don't want to lose him, Jan, Virgil said, the words gushing out of his mouth. What do I do? Roman was still in bed. He heard someone get home and shower, then he heard typing, so he figured that it was Roman's working on his assignments. He wished he could sleep, but he kept running the events through his head over and over again, glancing every once in a while at his phone. He had turned it off hours ago. He heard a knock at the front door and some chatter, and then the door to his bedroom was opening, Virgil's head peeking in. Virgil, you just be quiet for a second, okay? Virgil said, stepping in. He set his backpack down on the ground and then crossed his arms, looking at Roman intensely. You shouldn't have punched Remus. It was wrong, and even though he has accepted that he deserved it, you still hurt Patton. And you made my anxiety attack worse in the process. I was so scared for you, and for Remus. He took a deep breath, eyes trailing to the pile of clothes on the ground. I know things are hard with you and Remus, but as someone who has lived with him for a long time and has seen the growth he's made, he deserves to be happy with Patton. I'm so sorry, Virgil. Roman's voice cracked, and he fought the tears that were tempting to release from his eyes. I fucked up. I shouldn't have done that. I was just so angry. It reminded me so much of what happened so long ago. Virgil stepped out of his shoes and got onto the bed with Roman, taking his hands in his. I just lost it for a moment. I promise I've never punched anyone before. I know. I believe you, Virgil said softly, scooting closer to him. Roman pressed their foreheads together. We're going to be okay, Ro. Is Remus okay? Roman asked hesitantly. Patton took good care of him. He'll be good as new in a few days, I'm sure. Virgil smiled weakly. It's Remus. You and I both know that he bounces back quickly. Roman let out a low laugh at this, and Virgil twisted his fingers in Roman's hair. I like you a lot, Roman. If I had said anything last night, I might have said something stupid that I didn't mean. But I like you a lot, and you're not going to scare me away that easily. Okay, good. Roman breathed out, as that was a concern he had been holding tightly to his chest all night. I don't want to lose you, V. I love you. The words came out before he could stop them, and a look of surprise crossed Virgil's face, and then one of terror. Shit, I'm sorry, you don't need to say it back until you're ready. He sighed, But then Virgil smiled at him and kissed him. "Thank you, Ro," he said between kisses. "I'm not ready to say it yet. Once I am, I promise I'll tell you." Roman let out a sigh of relief as Virgil resumed kissing him, their bodies pressing together.